Sup everybody, this is Carrick with ACG, and it's my continuing mission as always to bring you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. And today's mystical tale of digital delight is Final Fantasy XV, the 15th title in the fantasy series that never dies. Let's see what the folks at Square Enix have cooked up for us this time, shall we? Final Fantasy XV is available now for the Xbox One and PS4 systems. As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. Also thanks to Rickert for the retail copy. So here's my review for Final Fantasy XV. Filming Michael Bolton videos on the beach, camping with the guys, sponsored by Coleman, and proof there's nothing in the world that can't be fixed by punk capris and a pair of black boots. And of course, graphics are up first. You know, I'd be lying if I said at times that the world and the people of Final Fantasy XV don't look goddamn phenomenal. From the preening chocobo who can rush into battle to save your squirrely ass when you and the other extras from the Blade trilogy get into too much trouble, to the sprawling locations meted out on the sedate drives across the land as you go from one gas station to the other, testing your ability to absorb gastric punishment by eating different culinary masterpieces at all of the various roadside grills and questionably clean cafes. Even for a landmass that really doesn't appear spectacularly large, there is an expertise in the environmental design that is instantly noticeable in locations that rarely ever look like one another. Every small cafe or local gas station has its own flavor, and the later larger cities each have a unique theme that is wildly different. And once you jump into battles, even the magicless ones, the game is a visual treatise on more is better, with every enemy lavished with incredibly detailed animation and special effects, and particles just showering off every weapon attack like someone just discovered the particle generator in the graphics engine and said, yeah, I bet more is better. Or the first time you face off with a demon and his flaming consorts at midnight as the entire location is bathed in their dynamic lighting. It's a sight to see. Now, at some point within the game, I began to realize just how much Final Fantasy XV reminded me of the sprawling lands in Dragon's Dogma. It wasn't just the day-night cycle with the undead from Dragon's Dogma replaced by massive shambling demons intent on humanity's demise here. It was the varied geography, from the high-top rocky crags in the west to the deep marshlands in the northeast, and even the sprawling kingdom of, not Venice, but really it's actually Venice that you see later in the game. The artistic representation of location and environment is really outstanding. Also across the board, the animation is phenomenal, if at times a bit drawn out, and every character and enemy has their own idiosyncrasies as well. Sadly, not everything is perfect in the land of Final, not Final Fantasies. The game is really schizophrenic in its presentation. Now, first off is the frame pacing. It is insidious, making even the 1080p resolution and FPS averages on the PS4, and even the various modes on PS4 Pro, hard to cope with. Delivering 30 FPS is not the same as delivering those frames in evenly spaced time frames within that same second. But on the Xbox One, the game looks like it's been run through a goddamn glaucoma filter, blurry even at the best of times. It uses a basic 900p resolution that's variable depending on its frame rate, and that can drop to 720p during heavy battles. But here's the kicker, its frame pacing is perfect on the Xbox One, like stunningly so, which means while it drops the lowest at times in frame rate, it actually feels smoother because those frames are delivered at equal intervals per second. And I hate this kind of crap. Frame pacing is a situation that these console makers and game developers absolutely have to get a handle on, and very soon. Also, the Xbox One uses some kind of heavy implemented temporal anti-aliasing, which just really adds to that blurriness factor. Sadly, really nothing comes away unscathed here. Now, the one special awesomeness is that all versions that can support HDR do, and this is easily the most elegant and just downright jaw-dropping use of HDR that I think we've seen so far. Absolutely stunning work in making sure the implementation is rock solid. You know, some of you guys may not notice tear or frame timing or even fluctuating FPS, but it has to be talked about. As a complete package, Final Fantasy XV is sometimes incredible to look at and watch in motion, even if that motion is sometimes marred by frame timing stutter or the occasional feeling you covered your friggin' eyes in rancid butter and challenged yourself to play an Xbox game. Sound, music, and voice.
Can't keep up with this guy.
The Crown City, then Hammerhead, then the Royal Tomb?
His nickname should have been Core the Restless.
That was embarrassing.
Remember, you'll be under Imperial watch.
Right.
Think of it as a necessary evil in order to forge the Covenant.
And of course, sound is up first in this trilogy of audio awesome, and the sound is actually pretty good. Listen, these games have always eschewed the more realistic hammering of steel on steel and replaced it with that over-the-top, high-end, shimmering fantasy sound that weapons make when they cleave through mechanical soldiers. And that's fine, because it all really fits solidly in the game world and the sound theme that Final Fantasy has always enjoyed. One thing I absolutely love here is the sound designers found the low end of the audio spectrum, something many times is missing in other games, and spells rocket in from the sky above and hit the ground with frequencies normally reserved for those videos on YouTube where chicks sit in subwoofer-filled cars with their hair flying around. You know, in a game like this, there's so much going on at any one time that it's really vital that the sound be informational as well as accurate in its surrounding, and this is done throughout, regardless if it's an Empire soldier prepping one last battle to send you packing, or you're suicide leaping your chocobo off a cliff. Good sound. Music. So the tracks here have been composed by Yoko Shimomura. Now, the music in 15 has been called excellent, trite, lackluster, amazing, and not very good all at the same time, and I would actually have to say at different parts I actually agree with all of those overall results. While at times masterful and really showing the composer's professed love for all things Beethoven and Chopin, the other times it dives into more unique influences like lounge. The fact is, though, many times it feels a little bit all over the place. It really seems to show its strength, though, in the larger pieces, and those are where the track fits the scene or a new character is introduced. However, there are some technical issues that don't have anything to do with the composer, but are within the engine that I have a problem with. For example, the prompt system has almost no fading at all, meaning walking from one place to the next can see you dropping out of thick orchestral violins, playing a dirge to knock skipped leg day workouts, and then suddenly it's odd, mismatched, almost tribal percussion with barely any fade. In fact, the times the game simply did not fade but stopped the music while playing something is countless, sometimes resulting in your team still in a battle that's obviously so scary that the artists ran away for their lives. Now, like I said, that's more of an issue with how the game handles the music than the music itself, but it is noticeable and it did impact my enjoyment of the experience. I would say, overall, I liked the music, but I certainly see where some people are coming from with some of their complaints. Voice. Yeah, so this is much more miss than hit. Apparently, many of the English voice actors found someone's crushed up Oxycontin stash and spent weeks grinding out sniff levels until they were maxed out. Not only is it, for the most part, just stilted and sometimes delivered with such lackluster care and desire to really emotionally connect with the moment, you actually start to wonder if it was on purpose. But once again, we have issues showing up in the audio system itself, and in some locations you can have characters talking to one another, but they start the responses too early, resulting in some cave runs sounding like everyone got paid by the second for their voice work. And someone says, "Did you see that?" While someone else says, "Yeah, that was scary," and someone else says, "See what?" all at the same time. It happens often enough to be bothersome and easily replaced "Their masterworks all, you can't go wrong" in my "oh dear God, not again" kind of category. But then all hope is not lost, because Arden, voiced by Darren DePaul, is oily enough he could skate into scenes. I mean it, he shows up and instantly the creep factor shoots to overdrive, like that older guy that stays at bars telling all the girls they remind him of his daughter. One part creeper, one part oily bastard. He is amazing when he's on screen and simply fabulous to listen to throughout. Also, Luna's performance grew on me right up until the last cutscene, so there is that as well. Overall, though, while the game offers many localizations and of course the original Japanese voice work, which I personally would probably go with, I can't say I was in love with the English voice work itself. The first time I heard one of the NPCs say "get her done," I realized I had probably lost the battle to ignore it though. And of course that brings us to gameplay and a little bit about the story. Now you play as Noct, a prince who's supposed to wed Lady Lunafreya to solidify a peace treaty between nations. So prior to the wedding, Noct, Igneous, Gladio, and Prompto decide to take a road trip. What should have been the Hangover starring an Asian One Direction turns bad when the news reports that the peace accord has been shattered and the lady taken hostage. What follows is Noct's travels to unlock the hereditary magical weapons of the kings that have come before, level up to take out enemies, and uncover the true plot behind all the Game of Thrones diplomacies. Now, while there are various modes of travel throughout the game world, on foot, later chocobo, and a couple smaller surprises, the main travel is really via your massive BMW fantasy car, and you can upgrade it with paints you find around the game world as well as stencils. While traveling, you can choose to automatically go to the quest points or drive manually, but don't let that fool you. Manual's just another word for you basically hitting the trigger to move forward. The driving is all on rails, except for one really oddly paced drive through the countryside that has you turning left and right like 4 times total in the world's most mundane Sunday drive. Whether driving, running, riding birds, or enjoying the scenic view from the world's dreariest Amtrak, at some point you're going to fight. Now, each Final Fantasy plays with combat, and though we see some similarities, each really has its own flavor. Here we have the active cross-battle system, which works within Final Fantasy's mostly real-time combat. Now, I say mostly because you can actually turn on a pause option that allows you to basically pause the game world as long as you're not entering any commands in. Now, within battle, you can attack normally by just holding down the attack button. You can warp, which is a stunningly useful movement, which does pretty much what it says, warping you to where you're pointing or various locations in the local battle environment. And, of course, defend, which, when timed correctly, correctly allows you to parry for massive battle damage. And also connected to all this is the ability to use crafted items and magic, which I'll get to in a moment. Now, while attacking is done by holding a button and letting the game auto-attack for you, what at first appears overly simplistic is augmented by directional commands on the gamepad as well as various other inputs, and even the location of your attack, such as attacking from the side, top, or behind the enemy. It's not as solid as a true combo system would be, but it's also not as simplistic as you might think right off the start. And add to the fact that each weapon, upgradable or not, has its own genre's attack patterns and styles means that 1 second you're flitting by an enemy Matrix style, smashing them in the back with your Sword of Icy Killing +5, only to switch out to the greatsword that's the size of a goddamn car bumper to hit them, so they basically just evaporate from the game world. Also, all your companions have various special moves as well as links and phantom links, some of those allowing you to set up Noct for a follow-up attack or join him on his own. While some games' combat systems are about timed combos and minimalistic frame counts, Final Fantasy XV is about slick and serpentine through the legions of enemies facing you so that you can spill out their walking fluids before anyone even knows what's occurring, then leap into the air, slam down onto someone with a sword so big it probably doesn't even need to be sharpened, and then walk away as they all fall apart around you. It is excellent stuff, but it is different than some might expect, eschewing harsh timing and memorization with a more cerebral overall battlefield awareness requirement. And of course, we're not going to skip out on magic. All Final Fantasies have them, and here it's environmental. It's fire, ice, and electrical, powered by locations around the game world that you scoop up like a human Duracell and then mix into potion flasks for various damage types, with hundreds of options for power, overall result, and killing potential. While not as bombastic as past titles, the ability for everyone to use it and some excellent combinations shows the elegance that separates complex from convoluted, and I actually really liked this magic system. And of course there's summons as well, and as with prior games, massively overpowered summonings, calling forth primordial beings that show up and basically say fuck this particular spot and then smite the hell out of it, or anything in the vicinity, sometimes even leaving celestial items in their wake. Fantastic, if a bit lean on the offerings, especially up front. Summons take a bit of time to build, or actually even get unlocked, but are worthwhile when you do so, even if you're like me who likes to use them on weaker opponents, hoping someone somewhere runs off and says, don't mess with that group anymore. Now, while fighting and killing and doing quests, they gain experience doing activities and discovering locations net you ability points. Each character also has a skill like cooking, scrounging, photography, or in Noct's case, fishing. Now, to level up, you need to rest. There is no in-the-field leveling up, which is fine, as the world's absolutely infected with places to sleep, campgrounds sponsored by Coleman Lanterns, and all manner of places to make sure that you get your fill of level upping. Now, ability points can be spent automatically in the ability system. Abilities run the gamut from individual improvements, group improvements, statistical changes, equipment modifiers, magic, and even exploration bonuses. The choices here are incredibly deep and varied, and make no mistake, how you spend points here will dictate in some ways the game that plays out for you, so pay attention to what you're doing. And a lot of these places have the ability to utilize the special skills the characters have, as well as a couple places that allow you to upgrade items or weapons. There's also a large number of hunts that you can do, progressively raising in their difficulty, but also their rewards, and the number of side missions is just right to give the world a lived-in feel without you wondering, how the hell did anyone do anything prior to me actually getting here? Sadly, there are some issues here that really do need some attention, ignoring for a second the stunningly long loading times and quick travel, which means you wonder sometimes if you should have just walked there. The AI is okay, but at other times it has some issues, and many times just disappears. Now, this bug has been reported by others since the game originally leaked prior to its release, but I can assure you there's no number of oh shits that can be screamed when the fun-puckering moment occurs where you're stuck in a cave against 20 enemies and your entire team decides that's the best time to just fucking take a break and go eat some chocobo burgers. Also, for an open world game, the traversal is marred with just a couple problems like invisible walls, which infuriate you as you look at something just past a small rock and scream, but it is right there! And of course the inability to climb or really leap over anything that isn't toddler or shorter in height. Now, those aren't game-breaking, but they do otherwise mar an excellent experience. All that being said, Final Fantasy XV excels in wonder and spectacle, especially of a new land, and employs gameplay chops in just the right locations to really keep you wanting to explore and play further. Fun factor. Final Fantasy XV is really an odd bird, guys. It's 40 plus hours of gameplay. It doesn't show the merits or, in fact, the penalties for a game in development this long. It just sort of is a game. It's not always amazing fun, but it can be, especially when the game leans back a bit and lets you explore. And it wears the trappings of its age like hunts, which are nothing more than really glorified arenas you run to, but at the same time, you're running through one of the most enjoyable locations and just downright insanely cool places in a game that is available right now, which makes that travel go by far more quickly. Its characterization for your friends is razor thin, even later on in the game. But for the most part, and for some reason, when you split up for various causes, you miss them, and not just for the absolutely van damage that they can deploy. Final Fantasy XV and the fun I had with it is more than the sum of its parts, that's for sure. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touched again rating scale. If you're a fan of Final Fantasy, this is a buy. Listen, if you're not a fan of Final Fantasy, some stuff here may actually get you interested. I enjoy the combat system, and of course, these worlds are never really that connected, so you can always jump in without feeling too lost. But if you are a fan, it's an instant buy. It offers an enjoyable trip through a new land, a unique twist on combat, and some of the best locations in an RPG in a long damn time. Now, it's not a classic and not up to the fine form some of the prior games have shown, but it's a solid contender and offers enough enjoyable playtime that as long as you know what you're getting into, whether you're an old fan or a new fan, you will probably walk away satisfied. Speaking of walking away, there's probably a good chance you'll walk away wondering just how much you would have enjoyed this, though, had some of those technical issues not been there. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, thumbs up, and check out Twitter or Patreon. If you didn't, thumbs down. And as always, if you want reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap, stick with ACG. Peace out, and enjoy the rest of your week.